Hey everyone, today we continue with delivery simulator series, especially with the bicycle system. In the previous chapter I said you that in that chapter I will animate bicycle, because as you see, here is the project. If I start, I don't have animations, wheels are not rotating and nothing is moving. But I take a while to think about it, and I want to make it for now simple, but it's a really important decision to rewrite a bit code and make it working with enhanced input system. So if you don't interested in enhanced input system, you can jump to next chapter, but it's very important stuff, I think, and I want to spend that chapter on explaining enhanced input system and to implement it for the bicycle. And in the character system, the UI and all that stuff that we will do, I will also use enhanced input system instead of that default action mappings and axis mappings here, as I set it up in the previous chapter. I made it because it is really not time consuming to set it up, but today I want to write it and explain to you why we should use enhanced input system. So before start, a few words. First is you can find all code on the GitHub repository that I will provide link in the description. If you struggle with something, or if something is not working, you can go to that repository and check my code, compare it to your code. One very important thing, if you new to Unreal Engine, to C++, then probably if you, after last chapter, if you reopen your editor, the first thing is a level. You will have the empty level, just open world with that mountains. You can open it just by go to level and open that empty level 2 that I created, is the first way. But you don't want to do that every time you launch the editor. So let's go to edit, project settings, and here in the maps and modes, in the editor startup and game default, just let's select empty 2. Later maybe we will change it to something another. And when you will launch your Unreal Engine editor next time, that map will be opened there, here. And also, probably when you try to launch your game, after you reopen your editor just with the Epic Games launcher, you will have some errors, like it will just say something related with the parent classes, that it is like parent class is null or something. It can happen with the bicycle, BP bicycle, with that blueprint, because it has that component, and Unreal Engine is a bit bugging and lagging thing. If you have errors like that, then what you have to do is just open your editor. So in the Visual Studio Code, how you can open your editor without go here window and then tools, open Visual Studio Code, just here open your Visual Studio. It's empty here, I don't have any projects. Go to file, open the workspace from file, search for your project folder. Here is the project of that series, and open that workspace, and here you have it, that workspace with all code, and you can work with that. And then I have launched it already, but let me stop it, and you'll have something like that. Go to run and debug and just select here launch delivery sim simulator editor, debug game, not debug game, sorry, development and workspace, and here start debugging. Just wait a while. Oh yeah, as you see, editor is starting, and after it will load, you will not get any errors. And every time you open C++ project, it is better to launch it like that. Even official documentation said that. So, okay, now let's talk a bit about enhanced input. And the first thing is how you should enable it. Probably if you don't have some very old versions of Unreal Engine, you will not need to enable it is already enabled, but if you don't, just check. Then go to Edit, Plugins, and here search for Enhanced Input. Enable it if you don't have it enabled. Then Edit, Project Settings, and here the Input. And here scroll down and you will see default player input class. It should be enhanced input player input, and here default input component class is enhanced input component. That's all what you have to do. After it, you probably have to restart your editor. I don't sure, but Unreal Engine will say you that you have to restart your editor if you should do that. And if Unreal Engine say that, then do it. Simple as that. So why I made decision to switch to the enhanced input system? Because project will be large and it should be scalable, and enhanced input allow us to do that. Enhanced input allows some features like complex input handling. I will show you later what it means. Runtime control remapping. It's also the cool feature that it supports also actions, dead zones, contextual input prioritization, and all that cool stuff, especially prioritization. I think it's the most important thing. Of course, we will code it and you'll understand better, but now I want to explain it a bit just by words. For every thing that gonna have some input, where we can press keys or mouse buttons, then we will have related to it input mapping context. I'll show you later what is input mapping context and how to create it. We'll create it over the bicycle today. And what it allows us that we have that separated input mapping context is, as I said, prioritization. So we can layer one input mapping context on another, and if two key bindings are the same, for example, key W is the same, then that one with the higher priority gonna work. So now let me draw some cool example and you will understand it better. So here I am in the Paint, and let me draw you an example that I took from official documentation of Unreal Engine. So let's say you have character, it's my character, and it stands in front of the door. It's wrong. Like that. Let's say that it's a door. And let's say to open that door, player should press E key. Just E key should press. Sorry, it's a bit weird. E key should press to open that door. And also, player have inventory system. So let's say you have inventory, here it's UI, just he opened his inventory in the UI. It looks like that, just simple inventory with that slots, and let's say that he have, I don't know, some energy drink, some med kit, I don't know, like anything, sword. Maybe it's strange if you have energy drink and sword, but it doesn't really matter. Let's say here is count of items, here is 5, and here is 4, okay, here is 1, this one. And let's say that inventory has hotkey bindings, and inventory have hotkey E, the same key as here, E, just E also, not F, E. And when, for example, a player is move his mouse cursor onto, let's say, energy drink, and then press E, then that item should be thrown onto floor, just as an example, just hotkey. And if player stands in front of the door and also have opened inventory and press key, then what should happen? Door should be opened or item should be thrown. And if I would use just default action mappings, all that old action mappings, then I have to every time check it, or just make boolean variables that will show me if my inventory is opened, if I'm in front of the door, or other stuff. And you know, it's not the best approach to have so many boolean variables that will show you something. It's not the best approach to solve that problem, because we can have not only door, we can have multiple similar cases. For example, in the other UI and other actors on the level that player can interact with. So every time we have to store some boolean variables, check it, and it's not the best code that you can write and not the most efficient, I think. So we will use enhanced input system that will allow us to have separated input mapping context. So inventory, we're gonna have its own, let's say IMC inventory, INV just inv, okay, it doesn't matter, just name. It's one input mapping context. Input mapping context is just the place where all related to that inventory key bindings, actions are gonna be stored. It's not some hard, complicated stuff. And let's say player gonna have its own IMC. I don't know, player. Let's just play. That will have key bindings to E to interact with something, because probably E is not one key binding that's gonna open the door. Maybe gonna open some other stuff or pick up items. In the code, we will firstly create MC player input mapping context and like add it to the enhanced input system with the priority of 0. And later, when inventory gonna be opened, then we will also create that IMC inventory mapping context, bind everything, make priority for it as 1. And as you understand, 0 is less than 1, so inventory gonna be called. And because of the priority, when we press E key with inventory opened, and always inventory gonna be opened. Or you could do it in other way. So say that IMC player gonna have a priority of 1 and inventory gonna have priority of 0, and it gonna be in reversed. Not only that, as I said before, enhanced input system provide cool stuff, especially if you make a game for the controller, something like dead zones or correct actions. Main concepts of the enhanced input systems is input actions, input mapping contexts, input modifiers, and input triggers. I said you already when I draw that what is input mapping context, just place where you store all actions, and as you understand, input actions were created and just provided to the input mapping context. Input modifiers is the thing that will modify. By modify I mean, for example, here I provided scale 1, -1, and so on. In the input actions, I will provide it as float or a boolean or vector 2D or vector 3D. And then with the input modifiers, I can modify it. For example, swizzle that axis, that X, Y, and Z axes. For example, negate it, so made it -1 instead of 1 when we press some key. And input triggers is the thing that we're gonna specify in C++, just it's gonna show us when to call actions. For example, when it's just the K is triggered, or K is just started to press, it's just press it, and then maybe cancelled, related, or it have a few triggers that you will see later. Okay, enough talking, let's start to implement stuff. Let's go to the transport folder. Here, as you see, we have the bicycle, and here in the transport I want to make input. For now we're gonna make input just to ride the bike and rotate the camera, and as you understand, that inputs are gonna be working for any type of transport, because every transport is like riding. We can move camera and so on. If we're gonna have some special key bindings, then we're gonna create a separated input mapping context. For example, in Bicycle, if we want to make some special key bindings for that kind of transport. Okay, so let's name it input. Here, let's create. So select input, and here input mapping context. As I say before, we have actions and mapping context. First, let us create input mapping context and name it IMC vehicle context, like that. Let's open it. I will save it. As you see, we don't have any mappings for now, so let's make it. I'll make new folder, name it actions, because we'll have a lot of actions and I want to store it in the separate folder. Input action, let's say that it is vehicle move. So here let's take a quick look at the input actions. The thing that you worry mostly is value type. The triggers and modifiers will later specify it in the input mapping context, so don't worry about it. Here, as you see, I think named reversal mappings is already saying what it's gonna do. And value type, we can select digital, as I said before, bool, float, vector 2D, and vector 3D. In case of move, we move in the x direction, y direction, left, right, and forward, backward. We're not flying. So let's select axis 2D. Save it, and you can close it for now. The second is gonna be in input IA vehicle look. So here it's the same. Select axis 2D because camera is rotating. When I rotate camera, we rotate it like that with mouse. Input another, and here let's say it's gonna be vehicle handbrake. Vehicle handbrake is work in another way a bit. Here value type gonna be a bool, because here in the code, as you probably remember, we have start handbrake method and stop handbrake method. We're gonna make it just single method, and that's gonna take boolean that will provide here, true or false. So as simple as that. That's all input actions that we will create, and now we should specify it in the input mapping context, that one. And we should also specify modifiers and key bindings and so on. So let's start, add mapping. Here select move, it's gonna be the first. So move gonna have first is W key, then A, S, and D. And let's take a look inside it. So here, as I said before, we have triggers, we have modifiers. We specified earlier that we'll get vector 2D. So it's just X and Y. And by default, just X gonna be 1. When we press W, it gonna move on the Y axis, because as you remember, let me open Paint, as you probably remember, here as I draw it, here we have X axis, here Y, and we move forward and backward like that, and left, right like that on X axis. So here we should move that 1 to the Y axis, and to do that I'm gonna add swizzle modifier. So add modifiers, and here select swizzle input axis values. Here it is already selected by default YXZ, and let me explain you what it is doing with swizzle input values. Maybe name swizzle is not the best, it's just my opinion. So the concept of the swizzle input axis, let me increase. Yeah, if let's say we have X, Y, and Z. Here, let's make it like a table, I don't know. And let's say that it's just default 3D vector. Let's say X have value of 5, Y have value of 9, and Z have value of 4. And after that, we will swizzle it with that modifier. So let's say we specified X, Z, Y, X, Z, Y, X, Z. So 5 gonna move here, just that value is gonna stay on the same place. 10 here and 4 here. And in our case of the movement, if you're gonna have X and Y like that, and for example X gonna have 1 and Y gonna have 0, and we want to move that 1 to the Y, then we will swizzle it the same way. Here we're gonna have only Y and X. Of course here it says Y, X, Z, but because of that we have only 2D vector, then Z gonna be ignored. And just 1 gonna be moved here, and X and 0 gonna stay here. We get our value in the Y axis. So player moves forward. Something similar gonna be for the backward movement. We're just gonna negate it and say that it should be -1 instead of 1, but I will show you in just a second. So here, swizzle input axis values. I hope you understand how it works, just basic concept. Next binding is gonna be S, so move backward. Here is the same, we just add swizzle input that works in the same way. It works in the same way as here, so just swizzle it. And the main difference is that we're gonna add also negate modifier. So add another modifier, and the order matters, so move it under the swizzle input axis if you have it on top. So, and say that it's negate. Here we can specify what axis we're gonna negate, but we can leave it as it is because we're gonna have only X axis, so it doesn't matter. So what negate gonna do is just gonna add minus here, and so we move in the -1 by Y axis. So it's simple. Next key binding is gonna be much easier. So sorry, here create another, gonna be A. In the A we're gonna need only X axis, and it is already 1, so to move when we press A we have to move left. So what we have to do? We have to negate it and say that it is -1. So here search for negate, and the last, oh sorry, I added mappings, and the last key binding is gonna be D. Here you can just don't touch it because it is already +1. So nice, we have vehicle move. Next is gonna be much faster. Let's add mapping for the look. Here let's select mouse XY because we're gonna look at the X and Y axis of mouse to move it in all directions. And here all we gotta do is add negate modifier. Is just and also here we should only add it to the Y, because in most games Y is negated. So when we our mouse like that, let's see, when you move your mouse right, camera moves left. When you move mouse left, camera moves right, like that. In most games it is implemented like that, so let's make it negate. Okay, fine. And the next, oh sorry, and the last for today is gonna be handbrake. Handbrake will work with the space bar, and we don't have to add anything because it's just true or false. When spacebar is pressed, then it's true. When it's not pressed, then it's false. Simple. Okay, and here we specified it. And now let's jump to the code and add a bit code. So in the last episode, we made that code. We made a lot of methods, and now we're gonna remove it. First thing is, I just wanna comment it for now. By the way, key binding for comment in selected section in the Visual Studio Code is Ctrl/. Probably if you work in the other code editor, you're gonna have another key binding. But okay. Why I added new function? Delete it if you have. A few things that I have to include is input action value in the range. The input action value is that value that we're gonna get in the methods and later convert to the vector, to the boolean and other types. Also, let's forward declare new input mapping context and input action. Like that. Input mapping context is that input mapping context that we created, so that one here, and input input actions is that actions. So we forward declare it to use only in .h file, and here let's make protected section because we don't want to allow other classes to get access. We just want to make it internally in that class and in the child classes. Okay, so first thing is we're gonna add new property, edit anywhere, and blueprint read-only. Blueprint read-only just to not edit it on the runtime. So we can't say in the blueprints that that property equals to that value and something like that. But edit anywhere, so we can in the editor specify what object is passed here. And category is gonna be input. And it is, let's just copy, let's write it, input mapping context. Okay, let's make pointer to it, because we want to get here that context that we created. Later we're gonna specify it in the Unreal editor, and let's say it's vehicle mapping context. Then let's just copy the new property thing, because it's a bit time consuming to rewrite it every time. I'll just copy and paste it, and it's gonna be new input action. First is move action that we created, as you remember. Then let's just copy and paste. There's gonna be a look, and the last one for now. Later we're gonna add other actions in the later chapters, and it's gonna be handbrake action. Fine, and also we have to add methods that gonna be called when key is pressed. So first is gonna be void ride. Ride is just when the move action is happening, and here we're gonna get f input action value. So f input action value, as you will see later, you can convert it to the values such as float, bool, vectors, f vector 2D, f vector 3D. So here we get the reference to it, and let's just say its value. And now let's copy it a few times. By the way, in the Visual Studio Code, if you work on Windows, to copy and paste line of code that you're currently on, press Shift Alt and arrow down or arrow up if you want to make it on top of the line. Okay, here it's gonna be a look, and then handbrake, and from the capital. So now I will just delete the functions, methods, and here we can also just delete because we don't want it, and here also. Okay, and here let's firstly add declarations for the methods. In Visual Studio Code, to add declaration, hit right mouse button and create declaration. Wait a bit and it's gonna be created. And the same with the look and handbrake. Okay, so here I have it. If you don't have that button to create definitions or something like that, you can just write it manually. It's not hard. Okay. Here in the setup player input component, we have to bind actions that we created earlier. But before binding we should add mapping contexts. So enhanced input system knows that we have that input mapping system, that one. Okay, so let's get player controller. So add player controller. So our player controller, its pointer, because we get in it. Controller is equals to get controller. But here when we get controller, we get just a simple A controller without a player. So we have to cast it. Cast is just like change type. And here from the player controller, we can get a local player. And from the local player, we can get subsystem. It's enhanced input subsystem, where we're gonna add the mapping context. So here also when you create some pointers, when you get something, then cast something, always add if statement to check if it is a null reference or not. It's very important because if it's gonna be null, then ads are gonna crash and you'll get error. So here, if player controller is not null, then we can get enhanced input local player subsystem. And also I almost forget, here we should add a few includes. So we have to include an enhanced input component, the rich, and include enhanced input subsystems. The subsystem that I gotta get. Also here you will have that build.cs .build.cs file. Go to it and check if you have enhanced input here. If you don't have, add it, because otherwise it will not compile. And here we also get pointer to subsystem. So the concepts of subsystems are gonna be covered in more details in the later chapters. But now just you should understand that local players, game instance, that all the kind of core classes, core objects mainly used have their subsystems, such as enhanced input subsystem, or we can build our own subsystem, just that handle some functionality. Maybe it's not the best explanation that I said, but for now, subsystem just think where that we can get from some object and where we can do some interesting stuff. Okay, local player. So you local player have static method called getSubsystem, and here to get subsystem we have to specify type of the subsystem. In our case, just copy that type and here specify it. I'll go to the next line. And here we have to pass your local player object. So for that we get player controller, and from the player controller get local player. Nice. Here you don't have to add it, just here, like that. And now also check if subsystem is not null. So if subsystem, then subsystem add mapping context. Finally, we're gonna add our context, vehicle mapping context, and the priority of 1. As I explained earlier, as I wrote in the point earlier, what is priority? I think you remember that every mapping context have priority. Key binding with the higher priority will work. One interesting point is if you work in a rider, probably a rider gonna recommend you to kind of optimize your code by moving that line of code here in the if statement. It's like small optimization, and we can just move that line where we add a variable to the if statement, and if statement that just checks if that variable is null or not, and the same we can do with that thing. So cut it and paste to if section, and maybe let me delete it like that. A bit long piece of code, not okay. Okay, fine. So we added mapping context, and now we have to get enhanced input component, and with that enhanced input component, we can finally bind actions with that methods. So here the same. I will declare that variable in the if statement. So you can set input component. It's gonna be enhanced input component. I will name it like that. And here we have to get that player input component that's specified here as a parameter. But as before, we have to cast it. Here I will do the same way as Unreal Engine make it in the templates. So Unreal Engine use here not just cast, but cast checked. Cast checked gonna allow us to throw an error if enhanced input component gonna be null, if it is impossible to cast. And mostly we don't want to do that, but in that case it's okay. So cast to that type, pass here per input component that is specified in parameter in current method, and here we can bind actions. So let's start enhanced input component, bind action, and the first action is gonna be move action here that is specified, move action. Here you can see the parameters that we have to provide. First is action that we provided already. Second is eTrigger event. So eTrigger event, as I said before, triggers, there is that triggers. So trigger it is just when it press it and hold. We will use it for the move and look. Start it is when we start press, and then complete it is when we like unpress, I don't know how it's called, like stop to press it button. We will use start and complete it for the handbrake. Cancel it and go on, complete it, and all of that you can use. So select triggered, then we have to provide object in where method is going to be called. In our case it's just this, this object. This, if you're not really familiar with the OOP in the C++, this is just a pointer to that AVehicle that we now in. So AVehicle is just this object that we currently in, and here we, as you see, we can specify just name of the method, but I personally like to pass reference to it. So just you can select it, and here with ampersand pass the reference to the method. Okay. In the similar way, let's bind look action. Here, GetTrigger event will be also triggered, because when we trigger, when we just move mouse, it always should be called every time it's triggered. Then this, and the same way, pass reference to the method. And now it's gonna be more interesting, because we will bind action to the handbrake. So here handbrake action. Here yet trigger started. Also this, and pass handbrake as a reference. And now let's with Shift Alt and arrow down, copy that line, duplicate, and here on completed also pass the same method. So on started, that value is gonna be true. On completed, that value is gonna be false. It's all the difference. Okay, now we specified everything, we set it up, enhanced stable component. Now let's compile code. Of course, it will not work for now, because bicycle will not ride, and the methods are just not implemented yet. But let's compile and see if you have some errors or something. And as you see, compiled successfully. Let's go here to the bicycle blueprint class. Let's open full blueprint editor. If you select BP bicycle and here search by the category input, you will see that properties that we specified earlier in the C++. Of course, we can't left it just as none. So here select vehicle context. Here in the move action select move, look, and here handbrake. Right? Compile and save. Now let's implement methods. So as you remember, later when we implemented ride, when we made separated methods for the move forward, move back, and rotate steering, and so on. In that case, when we have 2D vector, we can make it just in the one method. So here, as I said before, this value contain f vector 2D in case of move action that we now in. So here, const f vector 2D. Let's name that variable current value, and we can just write value dot get. That get method gonna just get the value of the type that is specified here. Let's call it, and we get our f vector 2D. And here, just get vehicle movement component, and in it, first thing is set throttle input. Set throttle input is just right forward or right backward. In that case, we just pass current value dot x. Oh, sorry, not dot x, dot y. As I showed here, move forward, backward. It's y-axis. And also, in the same method, we should set input for the go back. So for the go back, but By go back I mean break. We should get the same component and set break input. In the set break input, we're gonna provide minus current value.y, because when we press S, as you remember, we negate that value in the y. So when we negate it, then it becomes -1. And here, if you want to make a break, then we want to convert it back to the +1 in case of back input, because if you pass in some of that methods of the vehicle movement component minus value, that will not do anything. So we just convert it like it's the same if we multiply by -1. So and in C++ we can just write minus current value dot y. Okay, and here let's also add rotating. So set steering input, and here it's simple, just current where is it? Current value dot x, because x gonna just show how we should rotate steering. Okay, fine. Let's now jump to the look methods. Here do the same. I will just copy and paste because we get the same f vector 2D. And here just in a similar way as we done it before. Let's check get controller. If controller is not null, because if it's null, then next functions that I will call will not work and we will get null error. Here add controller yaw input, it's current value dot x, and add controller pitch, it's current. So probably if you don't really understand what is yaw, what is pitch, and why I provided here x and y, then take a look here. I download that image, that illustration of the yaw, pitch and roll axes, and see, here we add yaw input and provided x axis. So here, as you see, yaw is rotating on z. As you see, we're rotating like, let me change the color, we're rotating like that, from side to side when we have x value. And yaw, as you see here, it's the same. We rotate from side to side. You can take a look at that illustration and you will understand better why I providing that parameters. And in the pitch, as you maybe look on your mouse, we can move left and right, and also top and bottom. When we rotate top and bottom, then we add pitch input. So as you see here, it's for the left, right, yeah, and pitch for the top and bottom. And it works that way. Fine, and let's finally add handbrake. It's gonna be simple. We can copy here, just change type to the bool, and add vehicle movement component and set handbrake input. Here just provide current value because it is true or false depending on should we enable it or not. Okay, now let's compile the same way. Ctrl Alt F11. Oh, here I have that error. Sorry, I made a typo. Here is not current, just current value. Okay, save and compile. Everything is successfully. And now let's test it by starting game, by run. And as before, bicycle is moving, we can move back and forth, rotate, move camera, pressing the space bar, so handbrake is enabled or disabled, and it's fine. The last thing that I want to do today is add method to get GetYRideAxis. By that I mean get -1, 0 or 1, and that value gonna depend on we move forward or not move forward or move backward. We will use that method mostly when animating a bicycle, because we should see if currently button is pressed, and if it is pressed, then pedals should rotate in. If it is not pressed, then pedals should not rotate in, and like that we'll use it. So what we gotta just do, in other simple words, we got to add method that gonna just get that value, that y value from here, but it's gonna be separated method, not right. So to do that, it's one important concept of the enhanced input that you have to know. Let's make that method public, and it's gonna be a function print callable. In the category, let's, I don't know, say animation. It will print callable, yes. And here, returning type gonna be float, and let's name it GetYRideAxis. And it's gonna be constant method because we're not changing anything inside object when calling it. And also let's now make private section, private, and here specify some interesting thing that we're gonna bind action to it. So that variable gonna just contain axis from the enhanced input. You'll see now. So let's forward declare it to not write includes. It's enhanced input action via binding. It's gonna be pointer, and here redaction binding. Let's name it now. We can go to CPP, and here after we bind all actions, we can say that right action binding is equals to, it's gonna be pointer, so ampersand bind action value, here bind action value, and we provide that move action. So now right action binding gonna always contain the same value as here. And now we can implement method. So here, let's just copy it, and here let's paste. And here, before the main logic, let's check on the null reference, because sometimes it's null and we don't want to get errors. If it is null, then just return 0. And by writing that f, I specified that that digit is float, just float. Okay, and here we can, as before, get effector 2D, effector 2D, let's say this right value equals to here get value, get value, so we get that if input action value, and from that, as before, we get the same in the same way. Okay, and now we just return y. Of course, on the animation capture, I will repeat it, I will show it one more time. And okay, now let's compile. Just check if everything is okay and fine. Everything is successfully. So I think that's it for today. I want just to here PowerShell, and as I said, and in the start of this video, you have link to the GitHub repository in the description where you can compare your code to mine. And now I just go to git add all and git commit. Let's make message. It's gonna be switch to an enhanced input system. Commit and git push, so you see it on the GitHub. Okay, fine. And I think it's it for today. Thanks you for watching. In the next chapter we will find an animate bicycle. Don't forget to hit like and see you later.